Welcome, everybody, to this week's edition of the Liberty First Foundation Roundtable. Tonight with me, I have Michael Vasquez and Jan Rains. Michael is does the No Sound Bites Allowed podcast and YouTube channel. Myself, I'm one of the co-founders of the Liberty First Foundation. And Jan's been a pretty solid contributor to the Liberty First Foundation, No Sound Bites Allowed, and several other organizations out there. Contributes with commentary and insight and so forth. Welcome everybody to the show tonight. Hey, Facebook user.
Welcome everybody to the show tonight.
Oh, who's that?
We're getting feedback.
Hey, Facebook user.
It's not me.
That's me. Gotta share.
So tonight we've got quite a few things that have happened throughout the week, and I'm actually waiting on Frank before we get into our big announcement that we are going to have later in the show. It's actually very huge for the Liberty First Foundation, and I'm hoping that it will actually help propel us and get us to the next level in what our organization is trying to do. Now, some of you know that Liberty First Foundation, we are a constitutional advocacy organization that has an emphasis on the Second Amendment, but we really focus on the Constitution as a whole because, honestly, that's where we need to get our government back to. And we are working on getting people to become active in their communities. And through unifying our communities, we believe that we can take this country back and get it back to its constitutional foundation. So that's kind of where we're at. And what I will announce later in the episode is how something that happened this week could definitely propel us forward with that. Now, that being said, there's been a lot of happenings over the last couple of weeks. We have balloon that was shot down. Since then, there's been, 4 other objects that have been shot down, and come to find out, several of those were United States and Canadian air balloons or weather balloons.
It's the distraction that's going on.
That's what it really is.
Just get real. And then we have a massive derailment in Ohio that is just, Eastern Palestine, Ohio, that the information that we are being fed from the government does not correspond with what people are seeing on the ground. So there's a lot of questions to be asked on that.
That's why the balloons are the distraction. That's why the balloons are the distraction. They don't want you looking at what's going on in Ohio.
No, because the news about Ohio is still coming out pretty steadily. Okay.
Well, the news has changed. Initially, it was the fact that there was no reaction. Pete Buttigieg wouldn't speak about it. And now it's the government trying to catch up and say, no, it's not as bad as you think. It's kind of like the economy is better than you think. They're covering it up now.
Well, the APA was just there and came out and said, trust the government.
Of course.
Nothing's going on here. Trust the government. But yet all these other people are posting videos that live there that show water contamination.
Yep.
That's why they got all the balloons in our news.
Sorry about that. Had a little interruption because, okay. So getting back to that.
Yeah.
The government hasn't been very transparent in all of this. And now today I see the NSTB director is calling for people to stop their misinformation, that the NSTB is going to be as transparent as they can with this investigation, and that it takes time, and the protocols the NSTB or at NTSB, get my acronyms right, have in place work. Okay, but yet we have other agencies like the EPA telling us that, hey, nothing to see here, everything's all fine, but yet we find out that very hazardous chemicals are getting into the Ohio River. Not to mention that very hazardous chemicals are being burned off to enter our atmosphere, which is going to involve most of the eastern seaboard when everything's said and done. So, I mean, come on. I mean, I understand there's times when certain information needs to be from the public, but in a crisis situation like what's going on right now in Ohio, that is when government needs to be the most transparent about what it's doing, about what's going on, and where various investigations are. They can't keep people in the dark.
Well, I think Jan's been following more.
To me, some of this.
Good, Jan.
Yeah, to me, some of this that I find really interesting is they're not telling us that the train was on fire way before it derailed. The train miraculously derailed on one of the most important culverts that lead into the Ohio River and elsewhere. And the fact that they blew it up, why are we not hearing anything about this? And then another thing that I saw on another outlet that I follow on my internet-wise, and I thought this would be good to bring to you, Mr. Boss, because you know more about this stuff. We all know they keep preaching to us, you will own nothing and you'll be happy about it.
Yeah.
Is it true that the government can take over any property that has been, how did they put it? Chemical laden?
No. You're thinking that's a mix of two different ideas of eminent domain, and there is another, I'm forgetting the term, where the government can take over certain properties for protection of the public. But no, the government can't just walk in and take over property. As in the case of eminent domain, there has to be a clear and explicit reason for the government to take property, such as we're putting a hospital in, which will benefit the entire community. And because of the eminent need and the benefit to the entire public, and if there is no other way to build that hospital without having that property, then the government will come in and they don't take it, they will purchase it. Of course, at a price that is supposed to be marketplace, which doesn't necessarily reflect its actual value, but they will buy that property, take it, then take it over and build that public facility. That's the way it's supposed to work. That isn't how it actually functions in many places, like in Utica, New York, where we've seen a big thing about that and the hospitals being built there that were unnecessary. The land that they took over was not land that they needed. There were other facilities that they could have expanded or improved on. The community itself didn't want it. The politicians wanted it. It was a means of moving money around in New York State. I'm very familiar with the Utica Hospital, the MVHS. But that's just one example of the misapplication of eminent domain. Toxicity.
And another way that they
Well, okay.
abuse.
Let me stop. Let me stop you for just a second. I just pulled up. It says the laws governing Agenda 2030 land development allow governments to seize polluted lands and move their residents into smart cities.
Agenda 20, anything that says agenda, any of the like Agenda 2030, Agenda 2021, or any of those, that's UN. It has no standing in the United States. There
No.
may be a statute in the
Okay.
UN that says for countries that agree or accept their policy, their principles, that they will follow that, but it has no standing in the United States.
Well, that
Does
we
that-
know of, because we know our government is doing all kinds of things they're not supposed to be doing.
Well, yes, but theoretically, Congress would have to adopt, propose, and vote on and pass a law to adopt any proposal of or agenda of the UN. So I know people will point to that, and I've heard about Agenda 21 and Agenda 30. I'm familiar with that. ESG is sometimes what it's called out in Europe. And that's just a idea of the government manipulating communities towards a more progressive socialist ideology with climate change in mind. But that's
And not only that, any of the UN agendas, in order for them to go forth, they have to be put in a treaty, and that has to be, again, 2/3 of our Senate has to say, yes, we agree with this treaty and ratify that treaty before it is actually able to go into effect. So a lot of this Agenda 21 and Agenda 2030 and other things from the UN, WEF, and so forth, okay, those can't just be implemented, even by executive order or anything like that, because they are treaties. And unless there is actual funding put forth from Congress, there's no way to implement them anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Even taking land, like you said, that has been polluted and so forth, it is still, if they do it under an eminent domain process, they still have to pay fair market value, even if it's a hazard to the communities and so forth. That's just stuff that they can't just circumvent.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a lot of things in place on that, and government really hasn't ever been able to. I'm trying to think if there's ever been an incident because there has been some polluted areas that government has stepped in and basically bought the properties to reclaim them, okay, and basically mitigate the pollution problems.
You're thinking of like the Lowland Canal?
Yeah.
But and even in that case where the government went in, that was well after the fact.
Right.
The government didn't sweep in and just take it. It was well after a whole process.
And lots of times what ends up happening in that type of situation is the government will relocate people at governmental expense in order to get them out of harm's way, so to speak. And in the process also buy their property so that they aren't just without their property.
Hey, Frank, I see you.
Now, back to eminent domain too. Another way eminent domain's been abused, and unfortunately this has been upheld by the courts in several places, is for private corporations to build factories and whatnot. Frank must have had to have left. leave.
Might have been the phone connection.
Well, he's in a very important meeting that kind of spun off from what the announcement that I'm going to make later is all about. Okay, and I know everybody's kind of anxious about what, but I really want Frank to be on here when I make that announcement. I mean, it's huge. It is huge. So going back to eminent domain, there's been lots of times when marinas, private marinas, factory or ground for factories and so forth, eminent domain has been instituted, and it has been instituted wrongly. Okay. And the courts have said, well, it benefits the public, so eminent domain can be used. No, that's wrong. Okay. Eminent domain was supposed to be used for government for like creating roadways. It wasn't supposed to be for building buildings and so forth, unless there was absolute no other place that building could be built. It was supposed to be used for like shipyards and stuff like that. It was supposed to be used for government infrastructure projects. It wasn't supposed to ever be used for private entities.
Yeah. Never private.
Well,
Which is the big problem.
I mean, I totally get, because you guys know more about, the legalities of everything, but it does make you think, because not only did we have this train derail, but we've had 3 others in the past week, and amazingly, all of them had chemicals on them too. And
there is not a train that runs this country that doesn't have hazardous chemicals on it. I guarantee it.
Well,
guarantee
not
every train you find will have some type of hazardous chemicals on it.
Yeah, not every single train. I mean, we know that's how they transport a lot of things, but I mean, it just, I don't know if it's kind of like the airplane thing. You hear of one airplane crash and then there seems to be 3 or 4, or with the way things are and everything, sometimes you have to wonder, is this stuff being done for a reason, or is it just happening?
Well, to an extent, Pete Buttigieg isn't wrong in saying, I think his numbers are off, but to say that there's 1,000 derailments, he's somewhat overestimating and exaggerating the situation. It is more common than not that trains run into issues. Now, derailments can be as simple as they're starting the train up and there's the one of the tracks gets a little moved or one of the wheels come off. It doesn't mean that there's this big pile up every time that there's a derailment. Very often they're able to stop the train safely. People and products are able to be removed properly.
Okay. This is from the Federal Rail Administration. In 2003, there was 2,133 derailments. In 2020, that number has fallen to 1,013 derailments. In 2022, there was 1,044 derailments, an increase of 4.2% from the previous year. But they're down 16% since 2019.
Right, and that's part of my
derailments actually happen a lot more than people think they do.
But it's the severity that we're talking about. The severity isn't what we see in Ohio. I mean, I personally, this was going back 15 years ago. I was in a Amtrak, I was going from Florida, from visiting family, coming back into New York, and we struck a crane. They were moving a crane, and somebody tried to run across the tracks with the crane and didn't make it in time, and we hit it. And it was pretty bad. Didn't derail us, but it did massive damage to many of the cars and the engine. Never made the news. It wasn't anything anyone, it wasn't big. It wasn't a big deal. But yet, if you're looking at statistics of things that happen with trains and the damages, it's something that happens more often than people think happens. It's just not big enough that suddenly, maybe one of the local newspapers may have mentioned it in Georgia because we were stopped there for a while. They had to bring out.
Yeah, you'll hear about locally, but you won't hear about nationally normally.
Yeah.
And the biggest reason why this one is being picked up so much nationally, one is because of the outrage of the citizens and the fact that so many citizens had to be dislocated from their homes because of the hazards that are involved. Another reason why it is getting so much attention is because people know a lot more is going on than what's being let out, and they're trying to use the media to try to stop a lot of that.
Right. That's what I'm saying is they minimize it. I don't want people to think, oh, I'm discounting what's happened and understanding the background of it. But what's in this case, where we have such a huge, where they made the decision rather than to try any other form of cleanup, the answer was, let's burn the chemicals. Let's only move people within 1 mile, knowing that they set off an airborne chemical agents into the air, which would spread much further than within 1 mile, that they're not looking at the evacuation services from FEMA are not affecting a much larger area that is within fallout and precipitation of these chemicals immediately, which is, some people say, about 50 miles. You could say 20, in that range. There are so many people who are being affected by this. And the fact that when it did come to light, when it did get national attention, the immediate response by Pete Buttigieg and the Biden-Harris administration and the news media was to initially ignore it, and now they're downplaying it. That's where the reaction is coming from. That's where all the outrage is, and it should be, because they're playing politics. That's why they didn't talk about it, because they didn't think anyone would notice, and now they're covering it up and minimizing it because of the political backlash. Whereas they could have very simply it's not the first time we've seen it in the news where we've had these accidents, where we've had these fires. The response of FEMA has been better in the past. All they had to do is, we screwed up. The response hasn't been good enough by FEMA. We're expanding the zone to better take care of the community. We've got this handled. We've got our people on site. We will do better. And this would have blown away. This would have been done. No one would have cared. It's the fact that they're trying to silence people, and they're making, and in killing the transparency and trying to cover up their failure in this, that's where everyone's going, I can't trust my government, which is understandable.
And in a lot of ways, what's going on in Ohio is very similar to what ended up happening in Katrina too, because a lot of the failure of government response in Katrina, they tried to minimize and hide in that too. And the only reason why a lot of that came out was, again, because the public was saying, hey, no, what they're telling you is not true.
Yeah. And the same thing with the news media.
And that actually shows the power of the public.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's demonstrated. the power of the public is huge when we choose to band together and actually take action. And the result is governments on the Ohio spill, government's kind of changed its course and is now actually starting to step up and starting to be a little more transparent about what's going on. That doesn't mean they're not still going to try to minimize it, but public is holding them accountable on this. And we're finding out that some of what the government's tried to pass off isn't necessarily the truth.
Yeah. They're definitely, the failure here is important, but I see what they're doing with this. From my outlook on it, this is all about 2024. This is about Pete Buttigieg possibly running for vice president. They're in protection mode. They're trying to protect him from the attack, not just the Biden-Harris administration, but very specifically Pete Buttigieg, because of his failure as the boss and his failure in the media to address this to the American people, the lack of transparency. And this is negatively portraying him and will obviously come up in any kind of vice presidential ticket that he might be on. And I think that's why they're trying to cover this so much for him. It seems to be in that mode. So,
and we can look at our history too. Okay, we've got this incident. What happened at 3 Mile Island? They tried to minimize that a lot too, until people started coming out and saying, "Hey, what they're telling you is not the truth." They did the same with the Tuskegee experiment with blacks and syphilis. The United States Navy actually released biological weapons over the United States. And that, again, is public outcry that actually brought that to surface. I mean, all the way throughout our history, the public, when they choose to come together, is able to hold government accountable for their actions. But when we allow ourselves to be so divided like we are today, then government accountability is pretty much nil. And then we end up getting stuff like that happens, like what's going on in Ohio, where government thinks, well, we don't need to tell them the truth. We can get away with anything that we want, and we don't want to hurt Norfolk Southern Railroad or any of these other rail companies, because they've got huge investors like Vanguard that would actually cause problems with many retirement funds and so forth. Okay, there's a lot that is looked at when they try to minimize this stuff, but in all truth, they need to be forthcoming with this type of information. Okay, when people's healths are at risk, then that's when government needs to be the most transparent. We had a very similar thing happen with the pandemic as well. Okay, government was not fully transparent. They tried to make believe that they were, but they weren't. And there's a lot of information and a lot of stuff that we still don't know about with the pandemic because government's trying to hide stuff.
Well, did you hear about the avian flu? Did you hear about there is the H5N1 avian flu,
right?
Which the U.S. government had been modifying. Again, another gain of function situation with this. Now, the avian flu has been around for about 2.5 years. It's
avian flu, bird flu. Has been around for decades.
No, the latest one. The latest
Okay.
one that's been killing poultry and chicken in the last 2.5 years is the H5N8 version,
Okay.
which literally a year ago, and it'll be February 21st, will be 1 year from when I first noticed in the first case of the H5N8 avian flu being transmitted to human beings. 2 days ago, we just got the news. It just started circulating in several, I think it was science.com and a couple of other sources, that we found out that it's potentially because of the manipulation of, same thing as like what we saw in the Chinese pandemic, the labs there, the Wuhan labs, where they were manipulating gain of function. Same thing seems to happen in this case. And the problem here is if they do find it more transmittable, if this is actually the same strain that we saw from 1 year ago, this thing is about 60% contagious and 33% deadly. It would make all the pandemic concerns stupid. We were talking Black Death levels of loss of life. And it's been lost in the news this week, but that's a big deal.
Well, here's one of the things that really troubles me. And I know they claim that, well, we have to do this gain of function research in order to create cures for this stuff because our enemies are doing gain of function research on these same viruses. So we have to do it in order to stay ahead of them and come up with the antidotes just in case they decide to release one of these virulent viruses on the general public. Weren't there tons and tons and tons of treaties signed by pretty much every nation state in the world that they weren't going to develop biological weapons?
Right after World War One, yes. It was one of the major treaties of World War One that we were going to ban various chemical weapons, especially for warfare purposes, because what mustard gas did and how horrific it was. Yeah, so for 100 years, more at this point, 110 years, the world has already agreed, no, we're not going to do that. The only people who've really violated that have been Syria, Iraq. There have been some accusations of Russia at times, but not too serious. Basically, just Syria and Iraq are the only ones who have really been caught using chemical weapons. And the world hates them for it.
The thing is chemical weapons, biological in particular, once they're released, once that bottle's uncapped, there's no stopping it.
There's no guarantee.
Unless you have the antidote, there is no stopping it. And I mean, our country is guilty of it. Well, not necessarily our country. The British are guilty of it. When they infected the Native Americans in the United States with smallpox.
Yeah.
Okay. And otherwise, our country's guilty of this too, in doing it against our own citizens. Actually, in 1950, the United States Navy conducted Operation Sea Spray. And if you guys don't know what Operation Sea Spray is, Operation Sea Spray was the United States Navy releasing Ceratizia marcinicans and Bacillus globigli bacteria, and then sprayed. I'm trying to find the actual location. Has sprayed around 43 locations. And they believed that this quote unquote bacteria was harmless to humans. But they found out that it wasn't. 800,000 residents is released around San Francisco, 800,000 residents to inhale at least 5,000 of the particles.
Well, that explains why some people in San Francisco are a little nutty.
Mm-hmm. And they started developing rare, serious urinary tract infections and several other things. Some of them, they actually had some people die from it. And when everything came to about, it wasn't until 1977 that they finally had a Senate hearing on it. Okay. I mean, come on. This is our own government doing this shit to us. We need our government to be transparent with us. We need, and the only one that can cause our government to be transparent with us is us. Okay.
It's the problem is there are so many people who are more concerned about the Kardashians or the housewives of wherever the hell, or MILF Manor, or
Wordle.
You know, Wordle. I mean, they're more concerned about entertainment and temporary distractions than the core issues affecting us. And when you don't have people paying attention to the core issues, then everything else is possible. Last night, I was taping live a town hall. New York every state redid their congressional lines. And my area is now in the New York 19th. It's a brand new district with brand new 11 counties that had not been connected before are now connected. We have a new congressman. So most of the people in the district don't know the congressman, and he's never been in Congress before. And he had a town hall that I am providing. I was covering it live, the full content, everything from start to finish, every word that was said in terms of the questions and the answers. And no one's paying attention. 750,000 people in the district. And, you know, some people were watching it. Some people have seen my coverage on it. But it wasn't even 1% of the population. Now, I'm not saying that everyone had to see it from me. But the thing is that it's kind of like CNN. The only coverage that is everything word for word is mine. In the entire, out of all the news media, including myself, I'm the only one who has every single word available for the public. Less than 1% of the population, far less than 1% of the population, have actually looked at everything he had to say in a new district with a new member of Congress. Don't you want to know what this guy's going to do for you? Not what some editor says it's going to be, not what some political party says that whether he agrees or disagrees with their ideology, what he actually said to the questions that he was actually asked. No, because people were too busy watching, what was it? The new season of Picard. That tells you if they're not paying attention to something that's directly affecting their life, that they have direct control over. That room was filled with all the seats that they had available were filled plus extra. There were other members of government in that room, a county executive, a DA, a candidate, for an election. There were several members of government that were there. They could have asked any of these people questions and got answers. They were right there in front of them. No one's paying attention. The majority of people, 750,000 people, were like, okay, whatever. That's the problem. That, to me, is the problem. I'm not expecting 750,000 people to show up, but you mean to tell me that 1,000 people weren't interested either in being there or watching the coverage? That's scary.
You got a new district.
Yeah.
My district got larger, and it was already the largest congressional district in the state of New York.
What, you're in the 21?
21st, yep.
Yeah, with Stefanik. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And it literally stretches from Lake Champlain over to Oswego.
Yeah.
And as far south as just above the Capital District.
Hmm. Yeah, it's a huge.
So, I mean, it's
huge.
It's like almost half the state. It's a good quarter of the state.
It's about a quarter, a little more than a quarter. Yeah, almost a third.
Yeah, almost a third.
Yeah, but that's the thing. When you have one person responsible for that much, and like I said, and New York 19 is Mark Molinaro. He's a Republican. And he's got 11 counties. Don't you want? I was the only one in the room. And funny enough, I was the first one to ask a question. And so my question covered a lot of ground. It was a big question. But I was the only one there to even address Ohio as part of my question. The only one in the room to talk about that. We had a bunch of people who were partisans, many of them from the far left of the region, and they were asking about, their partisan issues, their ideology, citizen action, and that ilk. But most of the questions were about, are Republicans really going to cut Medicaid, and are they really going to affect Social Security? That was the big question. Yeah, and that was the big general question, and everything else was very specific towards climate change, or just accusations against him as a brand new member of Congress who had nothing to do with anything. On the debt and the debt ceiling. It just amazes me when we have that opportunity. But see, that's where we get the problems with what's happening in Ohio. It's the reason why we've got the lies that we saw in the State of the Union. It's why we have almost $32 trillion in debt. It's the reason why we have international tensions running rampant around the world. And we are going to be in a couple of regional wars very quickly. China is militarizing. They are going to be fighting shortly. And Ukraine, that's a Vietnam scenario. We're going to be sending in troops there. First, as advisors to help run the tanks and fix the tanks because the Ukrainians can't. And then
we've already got troops on the ground.
Huh?
There. We've already got troops on the ground there. And
not officially.
And we don't know about it, but they're there.
Well, yeah.
They're acting as advisors. They're training Ukrainians on these weapon systems that we're sending over there. Okay, I guarantee we've got troops on the ground.
I'm sure, but now we're going to have. But those are the special forces, the black ops. Those are the quiet troops. With the tanks, we need to send visible and
yeah, we're going to have some tankers.
We need tankers. We need mechanics. These aren't quiet troops. We need to send them because they can't fix it. So does Germany. So does the United Kingdom. That's a fact. Which means we have troops online who, once those troops get attacked, we're going to need to protect them or pull them out. And the guideline right now is, no, we're going to stay there because it's our proxy war. Well, then that means we need to put in more troops to protect those advisors for the mechanics and the trainers of the tanks, which means we're now in Vietnam. That's how we got in Vietnam. The advisors got attacked, so we had to protect our advisors. It escalates, and there you go, which is very scary. And again, we could be having this conversation with our government right now and deciding, do we want to do that? And to what degree do we want to do that? We could be having that conversation across this nation. We're not, which means it's going to happen all at once, last minute, and no one's going to have a chance to react.
And the thing is as people are getting fed the entirety of the truth of what brought about Ukraine to begin with, they aren't being told the truth about what's really going on in Ukraine. They are being told that Russia is this abominous aggressor that is only cares about expanding its territory. And this, okay, and that they are just running roughshod over Ukraine. Well, there's a lot more going on in Ukraine than people realize. I mean, Ukraine is, if not the most corrupt country in the world, it is definitely at the top of the list.
Oh, it's up there.
Look,
yeah.
With money laundering and various other enterprises. And then we also have to ask ourselves how a stand-up comic got elected president and then became a multi-billionaire in the process. There's a lot more going on in Ukraine than people want to believe or even think about.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily condone what Russia's doing there.
No.
But we can't necessarily hold Ukraine as this harmless innocent either.
Well, we have to think about the consequences. Okay, let's assume, and this is not the case at the moment because in American media, Jan, let me ask you, when you see the news about Ukraine, are the Ukrainians winning or losing based on only what you see in the news media?
Based on what you see in the news media, they're losing.
Okay, because most of the media I've seen seems to indicate that Ukraine is winning, but they need our help to keep winning. Like they're in the middle of the fight, but they're
That's
struggling.
what I keep saying.
They're having victory. That's what I've seen. The truth is, the Ukraine is overwhelmingly losing. They are slowly losing, but they are overwhelmingly losing. And the absolute truth, the strategic truth by anyone who follows the military realizes that if Russia absolutely wants to win this, they will. It can't be stopped. Ukraine cannot stop Russia from winning. If Russia truly actually wants to put it, they could drop another 2 million troops in there tomorrow. They could drop far bigger rockets and missiles and tanks than they've applied. They're not in that big a rush. They've got time and they've got most of the territory that they want. They could overwhelm that one country quickly.
Russia wasn't trying to take over.
Well, they don't want the country.
Okay.
They honestly don't want it.
Okay. What Russia is doing was basically giving Ukraine a spanking. Okay. They said, okay, we see what you're doing. You're wrong. Now here's your punishment.
Well, they're an example. They're an example to the other former Soviet states to Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, Poland, to the Yugoslavia, to all the former pre-Baltic states that bordered with Europe. They're making a stand. They're making a statement that we can and we probably will at some point come take you. It's very similar to what China's saying to Taiwan. We're going to come and take you. This is a statement about future action and the growth of Russia in the future. And this is just the example that you can't stop this. And Europe isn't going to come in and help you. There's a lot of long-term politics in this. There's a lot of levels to this. But because no one's having these conversations, because no one's talking about how this is a way to create another Vietnam situation, this is another 10-year, 20-year war. This is another Afghanistan or Iraq that's in the making in front of our eyes, and no one's asking questions about it because we've been told by the media, by the Biden-Harris administration, if you ask a question about this, if you question anything they're doing, well, then you're unpatriotic and you're evil. You must be a Nazi. You must love Russia. You're there to back up Putin, which is stupid. Because no conflict in the world is as simple as that. It's not that black and white. There are so many details and there's so many consequences. So I'm not saying,
and honestly,
yeah, go ahead.
There's a lot of things, a lot of American involvement at different levels of our government and through several corporations and criminal enterprises that have ties into the Ukraine, that if that is released to the general public, it would absolutely dumbfound us. The amount of ties that America has in criminal enterprises and corrupt enterprises over there. And actually, that's one of the things that they came after Trump for, is because Trump was actually in the process of getting to the bottom of some of that.
Yeah. There were a lot of investigations. Going back to, and I mean, you know, Biden is the most prominent face with him and Hunter being part of Burisma, being on the board, and him blackmailing their government not to investigate Hunter Biden. When Joe Biden said, "Yeah, you're either going to end this, or the United States is not going to give you any aid, and if you don't think I'm serious, call up Barack," which he said publicly. He made that announcement.
That's one of the main reasons they tried to impeach Trump over the phone call, because all the investigations would have started again, and it would have become public what's actually going on over there.
But the thing that most people don't realize, Hunter he's the tip of the iceberg. He's literally a very small part of this. 50 members of Congress have children who are on the boards of various companies and corporations in the Ukraine, doing the same thing that Hunter did.
Hunter is the weak link.
Yeah, he's the easy one to get.
Okay, he is the easiest target to actually stuff on if people are allowed to actually investigate him. And he's also the hole in the dike that they're trying to put their finger in order to keep the dike from failing.
Yeah.
Okay,
if he goes
some type of analogy. And the ties that go beyond Ukraine, it's a global thing. And that's one of the reasons why they are pushing for a global government, because it makes it easier to hide stuff like this.
Which is why we need people to be involved and paying attention. I had a conversation with someone recently who's not political at all. And she knew me. She knows I'm political, blah. And she just was mentioning to me how she hadn't voted. I'm like, no, you should go out and vote. And it was interesting. She was trying to tell me all the reasons why she shouldn't vote. And I was telling her all the reasons that she should vote. And someone else was noticing that throughout the entire conversation, with me saying, no, you should go out vote, you should go out vote, I never once said vote Republican. I never once said vote conservative. And they're like, but you're a Republican. Like you're the big Republican voice. You're the guy who always. I'm like, yeah, but that's not for me to decide. That's my opinion. That's my views. I want her to vote because it's important to vote. Because if we don't vote, these things that are happening are going to keep happening. And I think most people don't realize that. Like on this program, when we're talking about all this stuff, I know some people look at it and they go, but you guys are all on the right. No, not necessarily. This isn't right-left politics. Although, yeah,
we've called out conservatives. We've called out Republicans.
Exactly. It's about being involved.
Okay, and the thing is our position is we want our government to follow the Constitution to the letter.
Mm-hmm.
Don't want them to expand on it, but we also don't want them to shrink it. Okay, if the Constitution gives them authority, then by all means act upon that authority. But if the Constitution doesn't grant that authority, then no, you're not allowed to. Don't. And this is where we need to hold our government accountable.
Yeah.
Okay. And when it fails to operate within its given powers, its enumerated powers, we need to call that out. And when it overreaches and tries to expand powers to powers that it doesn't have, we need to call them out for it. And where we need to call them out probably more so when they try to expand power than when they aren't acting upon powers that they already have. And ultimately, it comes down to the more government expands its power, the less liberty we as a people have. Okay, because the only way the government gets power is by us giving away our freedoms and our rights. Okay. I mean, that's one of the reasons why the Ninth Amendment was specifically put in the Constitution.
Well, this is kind of in line with what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
This happened in Oregon. It was on the 16th, yesterday. I don't know. Most people didn't notice it. Again, everyone's focusing on Ohio, so no one's really paying attention to all the other things happening around the country that are continuing to happen. In Oregon, several of the cities and counties decided that they wanted to be sanctuary cities. Now, when I say that, I don't mean sanctuary city like immigration, like we see in California, which is a sanctuary state, or New York, which is sanctuary state, like New York City. No, I mean they're a Second Amendment sanctuary city, that they decided that the federal government could not make decisions on that would affect them on the local level, that their law enforcement could not enforce, as an example, red flag laws, that was not constitutional. Or some of the bans we've seen, or some of the ATF saying that braces are now machine guns, and therefore you don't have a right to do that. And they said, no, you can't enforce that. So we just saw that the court came out and said, no, that's not possible, that the government does have the right, and you as a local community cannot deny the federal government's place. Now, here's the thing that I find interesting. This is now going to be used in every state around the country to say you have to obey the ATF. You have to obey the federal government when it comes to the Second Amendment. Well, here's the thing. If and this is a tricky point that no one's brought up. If a state, a city, a county cannot make up their own decision about the Second Amendment and saying, oh, we have a sanctuary, you can't do that about immigration either, can you? So every city, every state, every county that said they are Second Amendment sanctuary, immigration sanctuary cities and sanctuary counties and states for illegal aliens, they can't do that, because the argument that's made here is it would have the potential to lead to uncertainty for firearm owners concerning the legality of their conduct as they travel from county to county. All you have to do is replace firearm owners and put in illegal aliens. It's the exact same principle. It's the exact same ruling. And see, that's why we need to talk about things like this, folks.
Well,
Because
and to piggyback off of what you're talking about, how many people noticed in the news that on Valentine's Day, Biden announced a $231 million fund to fund red flag laws and other gun violence prevention.
Yeah, I saw that.
yeah.
And and that's actually illegal, but that's beside the point. Or unlawful.
Yeah, but it's the problem is they're mixing these things back and forth.
Well, what they're trying to do is use the supremacy clause.
Yeah.
Of the Constitution. Okay, and they've actually, again, they omit or take out of context many things. And the supremacy clause is one of those that they take out of context. Okay, and the supremacy clause, if people don't know it, comes from Article 6, Clause 2 of the United States Constitution. And it says, this Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof. Remember those words. All treaties made or what shall be made under the authority of the United States shall be the supreme law of the land, and the judges in every state shall be bound thereby. Anything in the Constitution or the laws of any states to the contrary, notwithstanding. Now, these counties that are enacting these Second Amendment sanctuary counties are doing so under that particular clause of the Constitution. Okay, is they are disregarding laws that were made not in pursuance of the Constitution, or i.e., that were against the Constitution. That is what their justification is, and by all rights, that is the correct justification to utilize in doing so. When they go against a state law that is egregious to the Second Amendment or egregious to the state's constitution, then the counties are obligated to disregard that law. Okay, it is their duty. They are duty bound under their oath of office to disregard that law. And when they fail to do so, then they fail to do what their constituents elected them to do, which the primary purpose, and I've said this many times, the primary purpose of government is to protect the rights of the citizens it serves, not to infringe upon them. Okay, and when you elect somebody to office, that is the first thing you need to look at is, will they put my rights first and foremost before everything else, before party, before themselves, before government? Will they protect my rights as an individual? will they protect the rights of the citizens that they serve? And if the answer is no, then you should not be voting for them. Plain and simple.
Well, and you're right in terms of supremacy cause, and you're correct that if people aren't doing things that benefit their constituents, they shouldn't be in office. But I just find it interesting, and it just highlights the duplicity both in the news media and in the government, various parts of the government, that the same reasoning that they are now projecting to us why sanctuary cities for the Second Amendment are invalid. This is the argument they're proposing, but yet that same logic doesn't apply, and that same ruling and reasoning doesn't apply to sanctuary cities for immigration. Somehow,
and if they come up with abortion laws, the same thing.
Same thing. And notice how they're compartmentalizing. Well, we don't like this, so that's illegal. But we like these for the same exact reasons in exactly the same application, but those are okay because we like those.
And then we get into the issues of equal protection under the law.
Right. And the American people need to look at this and go, you can't do this. This doesn't make any sense. If it is wrong in Oregon, if Oregon and the counties don't have that right, then they don't have that right in San Francisco or LA or New York State. You can't pick and choose that. It's either you're telling us that this is impossible under the structure of the Constitution and our laws, or it is permissible. And you can't pick and choose that just because your political party or your affiliation likes that. It's one or the other. And I just want to, and yeah, I love the Second Amendment, and I believe in Second Amendment sanctuary cities, which is basically just living by the Constitution. I'm all in favor of that. But give me some consistency here. Stop playing this game.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and you can add what they're doing. You can add what they're doing with the equality crap to all that right now too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
they're taking things and saying, well, we're just barring this and we're taking this away because it's all in the name of equality.
Yeah, and you can't, and you can't because it's
and it's not in the name of equality. Okay, Jan, you have to get that right. It's in the name of equity.
Yeah.
Equity.
Equity and equality are diametrically opposed. In order to have equity, you have to have inequality. In order to have equality, there will be inequities.
Yeah, I said the wrong word, but you understood what I was saying.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, it's ridiculous. They want us to be more so the left than the right. They have a vision, and they've had this vision pretty much since they were incepted. And if it doesn't go their way, they're going to find a way to get it to go their way. Whether and they don't care if they're passing these laws unconstitutional because they put the fear out there before they make these laws.
Well,
I think
we have to look at a few things, okay? And we have to look at both sides of the coin here. Okay? When it comes to things of quote unquote national security, the Republicans tend to ignore the Constitution pretty dramatically. When it comes to things like criminal rights, again, the Republicans tend to ignore the Constitution a lot more than the left does. Now, in other areas, when it comes to entitlement programs and things like that, affirmative action and those type of things, then yeah, the left does. Ignores the Constitution. So both of them are ignoring it in different ways in different areas, but both sides are ignoring the Constitution. Okay. The Republicans were so gung-ho about the Patriot Act. Okay. And the Patriot Act was a huge blow against the Constitution, huge blow to our right of
Privacy.
to our and stuff. Huge blow to the Fourth Amendment. We have to understand, okay, and again, both sides use fear as their justification. Okay, the fear of 9/11 was used to justify the Patriot Act. The fear of criminal activity has been used to trample all over the Fourth Amendment and the Fifth Amendment. And I even want to say even the Sixth Amendment, in expanding police powers to the point that they are in violation of that. Okay, so both sides use fear. Both sides disregard the Constitution in many, many, many ways. And the thing is we have to understand that it isn't just one side or the other, and we have to be consistent in saying, "Hey, okay, you aren't authorized to do this, so quit." Regardless of what party you happen to belong to, regardless of what party they happen to be involved with.
Yeah. People just need to pay attention. There's so much of this that's going to the wayside because people just aren't paying attention. It's
That's
terrifying.
very, very true. Okay. And that's one of the reasons why we do what we do is try to bring that awareness and hopefully that we reach the right people. Okay. And on that note, okay, it doesn't look like Frank's going to be able to meet with us tonight. He was here a little earlier, and I wish we could have got him on. Except me running off the mouth, he ended up having to leave. Now, Frank is at actually a very important meeting for the Liberty First Foundation right now, and that meeting is to hopefully work with some people to help promote the Liberty First Foundation more effectively.
Sweet.
Okay. The meeting that Frank is at actually stemmed from a call that I got on Wednesday. I got a call from a gentleman that is putting together, if people don't know about it, in the fall, winter of 2024, the National Medal of Honor Museum will be opening up in Arlington, Texas.
Oh, cool.
And if people don't know what that is, Medal of Honor, first off, is the highest military honor that is awarded for bravery and actions in combat. Most Medal of Honors have been issued posthumously.
Yeah.
Okay. In other words, the recipient actually died in the actions that he was taken in order to warrant being awarded the Medal of Honor.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that being said, gentleman calls me up on Wednesday, and he says that he represents the company that is going to be putting together the commemorative book for the opening of the National Medal of Honor Museum. And I stopped and I said, "Okay, I'm sorry. I would love to be involved with you guys, but honestly, we can't afford to do anything with you." He goes, what do you mean you can't afford it? I said, we just don't have the cash flow. We don't have the money to be able to buy an ad or anything like that. I would love to. Okay, I believe in what you guys are doing. I think it's a great thing. We just can't. He goes, oh no, that's not why I was calling. I go, okay, why are you calling? He goes, what if I give you a 2-page spread in our book
Ooh.
for the commemorative opening of the National Medal of Honor Museum?
That's awesome.
I said, what? He goes, yeah, you guys are a Second Amendment organization and you are protecting our rights. I said, yeah. And he goes, we want to give you a 2-page spread to talk about the Second Amendment and the Constitution that will be included in this commemorative book for the opening of the National Medal of Honor Museum.
Oh, that's sweet.
Right
That
place, right time.
Sweet. Oh God, that's
so
huge.
I want to thank everybody that's ever shared an article of ours, a post of ours, a video of ours, because somewhere along the lines, it was seen by this organization and they saw what we were doing and they looked into us and they decided to give us this 2-page spread for this opening.
That is enormous. That is a high honor. I love it.
It is. It's huge honor. Okay. And it does correspond with what we do.
That explains why Frank was kind of excited in his video earlier.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I can understand that.
Yeah.
So I want to bring attention to what this actually means beyond us. Okay. There's just over 3,500 people since the Civil War that have been granted the Medal of Honor. Okay. It is an extreme feat to be granted that. Mm-hmm. I'm looking up something real quick.
Yeah, it's only awarded to those with extraordinary acts of valor and bravery on the field of battle. It's incredibly rare.
Okay. In this last war that we've been involved with during the Global War on Terror, there have only been 11 Medal of Honors awarded. 7 of those were awarded posthumously. Okay. Since its inception, a little over 3,500 individuals have been awarded the Medal of Honor. And the Medal of Honor was started during the Civil War. Yeah. It was during the Civil War that it started.
So we're talking 35.
Extremely rare.
Yeah, that covers. People got to think about the time frame. So you're talking about in that time, you had World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, Operation Freedom, our work in Kuwait and in Iraq and Iraq and Afghanistan, the current engagement in Syria, all of the global operations we've done, Bosnia, Somalia. I mean, all of that put together. And
there's a lot of other wars and actions that haven't been included in that list. Okay. I mean, really, there has never been a year that the United States wasn't involved in some sort of conflict.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that being said, this medal represents people that went well above and beyond um, their the call of duty, and they did that not to protect the United States, but to protect the rights of the people of the United States. And that's what we have to remember. Anytime you see a serviceman or woman, any member of the military, they are writing a blank check, payable at any time, to the citizen of the United States. Okay. And that blank check says that they will forfeit their life in order to protect your rights and your freedom. I believe we can do a little better in this country in becoming a little more self reliant and doing some for ourselves as well, and following these people's example of selfless dedication to a cause larger than themselves. The men and women, because there have been some women that have won the Medal of Honor. Well, they didn't win it; they earned it.
Yes.
Okay, and let's get that straight. That have earned the Medal of Honor. We need to look towards their example and understand that they gave everything. Many of these people have lost limbs. They sacrificed their lives to protect something larger than themselves. And we are trying to continue that fight. No, we aren't under imminent threat of death. We aren't going above and beyond the call of duty as the people that have won the Medal of Honor, the Bronze Star, the Silver Star. But we are trying to do what little we do in order to try to ensure that this country remains a bastion of freedom, in order to ensure that the guidelight of the Constitution shines as a beacon and as an example to other countries throughout the world of what self-governance is. And the thing is, you can't have a government of the people, by the people, for the people, when the people refuse to be involved. And that's the example that we're trying to set, is that we are involved. These men and women that were awarded the highest honor that could ever be awarded to any military service person, took that to heart, and they acted in a manner that went well above the call of duty. And we are humbled and honored to be able to do this, to honor these individuals. And when I look around and see how people just say they can't be involved, it crushes me to know that people can't be involved in their own governance and to hold their government accountable when so many have paid the ultimate sacrifice in order to give them the freedom to do that, in order to give them the freedom to be able to govern themselves.
Well, and I actually think you have a right to take it more personal because you are a veteran.
I am. Okay. And so is Michael. And that's okay. Yeah. I served my time. I wrote that blank check. And anytime I been called up, fortunately I wasn't. I will never experience the horrors of combat, of warfare. And I thank God every day that I didn't. Um, though I would have for this country, and I would have for the people of this country. I will today, even if I'm called to do so, I would today. But it's more than that. Okay, it's the complacency of people not people wanting everybody to do for them. Okay, and nobody's wanting to do for themselves. Okay, and that's what being involved means. It means doing for yourself. It means being self-reliant in your own governance. And a part of that self-reliance in your own governance is to hold our governments accountable, whether it's at the local level with your town council, your city council, at the county level with your county commissions and county legislatures, or at the state level or at the federal level, at all levels. Okay, even your HOA and your school boards. Okay, you need to be involved in your own governance, because if you're not, you if you're not involved in your own governance, then you are literally succumbing to becoming serfs
Mm-hmm.
into a serfdom. You are literally giving away your freedom of self-government, the freedom of self-governance. You are begging to be ruled over by a dictator, by a king, by an oligarchy, by whatever word you want to come up with. You're begging for that when you refuse to be involved in your own governance. And we need to again look at the sacrifices that these men and women made, not only to the people that they protected on the battlefield, but to the lives that they protected back on the home front. Okay, they look forward in the battle so that they can protect what's behind them. We are in another battle. It may not be a battle of bullets and bombs, but it is a battle of ideas. And it's a battle that was started in 1776 with the Declaration of Independence. It was continued under the Articles of Confederation, and it was expanded upon by the United States Constitution. And actually, if we look back even further, it was started with the Declaration of Rights in the 15th century, and then expanded upon again under the Magna Carta, which are all both precursors of today's United States Constitution. Mm-hmm. And the United States Constitution, as it stands today, was a formulation of many centuries of ideas that preceded it. And it is an example to all nations, to all people, of how self-governance can and does work. But it only works when the people are involved in their governance. And when they fail to be, then guess what? We get runaway government. We get government that acts outside of its bounds and its limitations. Now, we come to you each week. We try to highlight where our government's acting inappropriately. We also try to highlight where our government acts appropriately, though that tends to be less and less.
Quite a bit.
Now, the only way is for all of us to come together. And in order to do that, you need to be involved. And if you don't want to be the face of it, allow us to be your face. Allow us to take that fight to it. Okay? You can be involved by getting involved in any organization out there. You've got the 10th Amendment Center. You've got the Cato Institute. You've got the National Rifle Association, the Second Amendment Foundation, Gun Owners of America, Liberty First Foundation. Get involved with any of them. Let them know that you support them. Let them take the fight to Congress, to the governments, to the localities. But do something. Regardless of what organization you get involved with, get involved. Okay? Attend their meetings. If you don't want to go to the town council meeting, fine. Go to a community meeting where somebody can represent you at the town council meeting. Some way, get involved.
Yeah, I agree with those sentiments.
Okay. Now, I hate to end such a high note on such a low note, but this truly is a very tremendous honor, and I am extremely humbled by it. And Frank would be saying the same thing, but unfortunately, fortunately, Frank is talking to a publicist that is looking to work with us because of this and to help us get started again, a little more recognition across the country. That's what he's doing now. He's meeting with somebody on that. And there are some other things that are in the works. And as they come to fruition, we will be making those announcements as well. But this is, I mean, it's a huge announcement for us. We are very, very excited.
Yeah, it's great news. That is really great news
about this. Okay. I wish I knew who this user was. Michael, you better go back to this video, transcribe, and include in your 2-page write-up you are about to put together. So
yeah, there's some great emotion in there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's Peter.
Peter. Okay. Sorry, Peter. Your name's not showing up in our StreamYard chat, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's Facebook playing with us.
I have some ideas. The focus, while I want to bring attention to the Liberty First Foundation doing this, one of the biggest things that I do not want to draw attention away from is the recipients of the Medal of Honor. And there will be some people that are recipients that will be highlighted in that 2-page spread that exemplify the spirit of the Second Amendment. Okay. Now, I do not know when this publication will be actually released. It probably won't be released until the opening of the museum. We are working on some other things behind the scenes. And like I said, as we firm up some things and so forth, we will be making announcements on that. But this, when Frank was talking about this involved people in his video, I'm sorry, I'm I'm dumbfounded
Oh yeah,
by
it's understandable.
of this, and as a result, at times I'm troubled to find words to describe what I'm feeling and to describe the immense honor that I feel by being offered this. So I don't know where else to go from
No,
there.
it's an incredible honor. It is an incredible honor and recognition, and it's deserved. You know, the effort has been, you've been worked. This, Peter saying it himself. It's what we work towards, to get that recognition, to understand that people are hearing it. People are hearing these conversations, and it's helping people. It's helping our nation, and it's beautiful to know that
It
voice
is
is reaching that far.
okay, and it is. I get frustrated because I do when I'm out there talking to people and so forth, and people tell me, well, they don't do politics, or, well, I don't want to be involved because what I do won't matter. Well, that's it. Okay, because you're not involved, it doesn't matter. It won't matter until you get involved. Um, and that's the bottom line of it. It won't matter until you do get involved. And then once you get involved, then you'll be surprised at how much it does matter, even though you may think it doesn't. And there's honestly been times that I felt like everything I do didn't matter, that nobody's hearing me, that nobody is listening. And and then something like this happens, and then I realize that I'm having an impact on people that I've never met before, that I've never talked to before, that I have no clue that they even exist.
Mike, you don't, one thing that always reminds me is, notice how we've had no pauses, no interruptions in the video today, how conversation's going perfectly fine. And yet we have all those videos, all those live streams where suddenly Frank or you or me, even Jan, all of a sudden we just, boom, goes, there's this big pause. And it's not from our cameras, our systems, our computers. It's just that just as we were talking about one specific issue that may be in the news that maybe they don't like, yeah, there's a lot of people paying attention. We are, the voice reaches. People think, oh, I'm not reaching one. Yeah, you are. There are a lot of people paying attention. Not all of them because they want to spread the word. Some of them want to keep it down. And I always remember that for myself. You are being heard. I've said it many times. We are not alone. People who are watching this right now, you are not alone in your belief in the Constitution, in your belief in freedom, in your belief of expressing yourself. And this is just yet another example of we're not alone. We're all in this together, and we are being heard slowly but surely, step by step, more and more than we ever can imagine. And that means you too, the people who are watching this right now, whether you're members of the Liberty First Foundation, which I do advise, or whether you just watch this every week or you watch a video every so often, or I was talking to a politician the other day, sometimes they just listen when they can because they're busy, and okay, you listen to it on a Saturday morning as you're fixing up the house or something. It all counts. Got to be involved, and the support is there, and you make a difference so often. This is such a great example of The difference is happening. You just don't know it until suddenly someone surprises you.
Mhm.
That's a beautiful thing.
So I told you it's huge, Michael.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking that, but wow. Yeah, you're right. I couldn't guess it. I would not have guessed this at all. I knew it had to be something because Frank was just like, ooh, he had that little
Yeah.
spark in him. And I was like, what could he be?
Yeah.
Wow.
I told Frank about it Wednesday night at our for those of you who don't know, every Wednesday night, at least Frank and I and a couple other of our business or organization partners have a business meeting on Wednesday nights. And we kind of try to strategize and plan for things to try to expand the Liberty First Foundation and come up with ideas. Well, I sprung this on Frank Wednesday night at our business meeting, and it literally shut the meeting down.
I can imagine.
Because Frank had some huge news that night too.
Oh, good.
Because there is a gun manufacturer that manufactures high-end guns, and somebody somewhere, I don't even know for sure where, pointed this manufacturer our direction.
Oh,
and then went to our website and started reading through some of our articles and stuff. And as a result, they want to do some things with us, some exclusive things with us.
Nice.
This is one of the things that we will be making more announcements on. Frank wanted to tell me this.
Then you trumped him. Then you topped him.
And I led mine before he could do his. He goes, well, I guess that doesn't make mine as big as yours.
No, that kind of just tops it all. Yes.
Well, I think all this winds back to, as you know, we say every week and even throughout the shows, getting involved. If you can, whether it's hopefully a membership or just signing up for the newsletter, following L1F. The more people, the better.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if you can't do anything else, share our videos, share our live streams, share our articles, share our posts. Okay. And even if you don't want to share our stuff, find somebody that you do want to share. Okay. Whether, like I said, the Cato Institute, the John Birch Society, the 10th Amendment Center, the 2nd Amendment Foundation, the NRA, Gun Owners of America, any other Firearm Policy Coalition, any other organization like that. Okay. If nothing else, spread their message, spread their words. Okay. Spread our words. Okay. If you can't find the words that you want to say, I'm sure somebody else there can say the words that you are wanting to say. That will hit something that resonates with you. Okay. And share their information. Okay. That's one way of being involved. That's one way of taking action. And then also providing support to any of these organizations by signing up for their paid memberships. Every one of the organizations that I've stated, including us, has a paid membership where they use that money to help with whatever cause they're working on. Okay, whether it's promoting the Constitution, whether They are promoting gun rights, or trying to hold government accountable. Um, so they use the money that they receive through paid memberships to enable them to expand their fight into areas that they wouldn't normally be able to reach. And with that, yes, we do have our membership drive that is in process right now. Okay. For $15 a month, or $15 a year this first year, and we're going to be revisiting that in the future. $15 will be the lowest. Okay, but we are going to be revisiting that as we are able to offer more value to your membership. You can ensure that price will be going up. So you need to get in on the ground floor here at $15 a year. You will receive exclusive articles, exclusive content. There will be, when I do this 2-page spread, that's going to be available to members only. It's not going to be released anywhere else. It won't be released till after the book comes out. Okay. That is one of the things I will have to wait. But when it comes out, you're going to be able to read that article only if you're a member of the Liberty First Foundation. Okay. So you're going to have stuff like that are going to be exclusively only available to our members. I know Frank's working on some other things that he has in the works. I've got some other things that I'm working on as well, that are going to only be available to our members. Some of those are going to be available to any of our members, whether it's a member to just our newsletter, i.e., a free member, or there's going to be some stuff that's only available to our paid members. And the thing is do you believe we represent you? And if you do, I'm just asking you to support us, okay, in any of the ways that I've mentioned, whether it's sharing and letting people know about us, whether it's sharing our articles, or our videos, or anything that has touched you, okay, or made you say, hey, I never thought of it that way. Share that stuff. Okay. And then if you want to help us financially, we would love to have you on board as a paid member. Because like I said, there's some exclusive things that are going to be there just for you. So with that, do you have anything else that you need to or want to touch on from this last week, Michael?
No, I mean, you kind of topped it all right there. But no, I mean, big things we've really covered. I mean, everyone's talking about either the balloons or Ohio. And I wanted to point out, what's going on with the Second Amendment. And
right.
Then we have to always remember, just because all the major news media is pushing one story in your face, our government's still going on. There's still so many other things that are happening. There's still way more that we need to pay attention to besides that 30-second blurb that they're pushing at us every hour on the hour and then ignoring everything else. It's important. Ohio is important. Absolutely. And the balloon is worth talking about to an extent. But look at what they're doing. Just like we talked about, look at what they are doing out there, what they are minimizing, what they are distracting us from, what they're trying to make us forget about, which ultimately is we're in control of this government. It's our government. It's
what they're trying to hide.
Yeah. And if we let this go, we've got 5 million people who tried to walk into this country illegally because it's the greatest country in the world. I understand why they're coming. I don't agree with how they're coming, but I know why they're coming. We're great. And we are throwing it away when we don't pay attention to the details, when we don't talk about these things. It scares me.
Well, I think one of the things
there's a reason
I'd
why
like
they're
to
coming.
hit on, I think one of the things I'd like to hit on too with all that is the fact that, you know, we talk so much about the southern border.
Yeah, northern one too.
Mhm.
Just as
People
bad.
aren't looking, that's exactly it. People aren't looking at what's coming across on that northern border now.
Yeah,
Well,
that's a great point.
it's not just it's not the northern border and the southern border. It's every port of entry.
Yeah.
Okay. They're coming from everywhere. They're coming in every place. And we don't get that. We don't understand that. We don't realize that. Okay. You would not believe how many private planes land in fields and drop people off. Okay.
You know what?
It's not just one border or another. It is every means of entry into this country. And it's not in that. There's some people that come here legally and overstay.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's actually probably as big a problem as the people trying to get in.
I believe it's 70% of people who get visas, student visas in particular, but most visas, 70% stay after the visa ends. They're just running around.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And those are things that we need to look into. Okay. And we need to adjust our tactics on. I honestly have no problem with pretty much anyone coming to this country, provided they do so in a lawful manner. I don't care what country you're from. I don't care. It doesn't matter. But we have procedures put in place for a reason. And that is to give people an equal chance of becoming citizens of the United States. Okay. To give people an equal chance to come here and work in gainful employment. That helps not only them, but it helps our country. There's Frank.
Oh, there he is.
Hey, buddy. You just missed it. I've been holding off, trying to hold off all night. But I just made the announcement.
Some great news, man. That's really impressive, Frank.
Can you hear us, Frank? You there?
He's messing with his phone.
Yeah, he's trying to get things set up, I guess.
Oh, now I can hear you.
There he is.
I'm sorry I couldn't. I had to stop at the gas station on the way to my meeting tonight. I bought a set of headphones for the event, but unfortunately the microphone portion of it doesn't work.
Oh, great.
Of course.
I hope I don't give you any feedback on this because I have you on my Bluetooth stereo. I just wanted to stop in real quick and say good evening to everybody.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. You're looking happy.
Made the announcement. You just missed it. I tried holding off for you.
Hold on, I gotta try something else here. I'm trying not to get feedback on my stereo.
No, you should be good.
Well, apparently that doesn't work either.
Yeah. Well, we hear you fine. I mean, you can tell
all right,
on Bluetooth or something like that. but
Well, I
you're
just
not
didn't want to have
echoing.
the feedback loop coming. God, coming over.
No,
So
no,
I guess everybody
Yeah.
heard the good news.
yeah.
All right, excellent. All right, so we confirmed. I have a lot of news that I have to discuss with Mr. Marshall off camera, so that we can bring that information to everybody next week when we reconvene at our regular time at our regular hour. But some very good things happened this week. Some very good things happened today, and we'll be sharing that information with you as the weeks progress. But it's safe to say for the next few weeks, we're probably going to be having some special guests on the show with us.
Very cool.
That's fantastic.
Some very honorable people will be appearing on the show.
Mhm.
Oh, I'm loving
Nice.
that. I'm loving
Nice.
that.
Yes, very, very, very honorable people.
I like that. I like that
So
wording.
yeah, and not to necessarily give away everything, but a lot of what Frank was doing tonight involves what the announcement I made about our toothpaste spread in this for the book for the Medal of Honor Museum. so you guys get the word out, because we're going to have some extraordinary guests coming on over the next few weeks. And probably up until the opening, maybe even after.
That's not to say that our usual gaggle of miscreants that we have here every week are not extraordinary in their own right, which they are. But you'll see some new faces,
which will be good.
Some new faces, and the color baby blue kind of stands out to me. Well, listen, I got a 45-minute drive back to my house, in which I need to use my GPS for. So I'm going to just say goodnight, and you guys be safe, shoot straight. We'll catch you next week, and keep an eye on the page this week for little hints that we'll be dropping.
All right. Looking forward
to it. All
to
right, kids.
Okay, thanks,
have a good
Frank.
night. We'll see you soon.
Okay.
Okay, you take care. Drive safe. So, even more good news.
Yeah, he's happy. That means good things.
So, yeah. Things are, ever since that news, things have amplified for us. And I honestly hope it continues. Because, and I believe it will.
Mm-hmm.
All of our viewers and our followers and the members of our Facebook group and so forth, they're tremendous. They've been doing a great job getting information out. Now we just need to get more people to do the same thing. Because the larger we are, the further our reach can be.
True.
And that's why we ask you to share, like, comment, subscribe, hit the alert button, all that stuff. Okay, because those are things that you can do that will help us reach more people. And ultimately that's what it amounts to, is we are wanting to reach more people. Because when this country, no matter what the issue is, no matter what the problem is, when this country reaches a point of critical mass, then we are unstoppable. And it doesn't matter what it is. We are invincible. We are unstoppable.
True.
It's only when we are together, united as Americans, that we are that way. So let's quit with pettiness. Let's quit with the divisiveness, and let's come together. Let's build a foundation of the people, by the people, and for the people. Thank you, everybody. We are here every week, every Friday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. We encourage you to invite others to come and join the show. Come join the conversation through our chats. I don't care what their political position is. I don't care. They need to be here because we need voices from every walk, from every realm. Every voice needs and deserves to be heard. And if you want to come on here, you want to debate us, you want to have a conversation with us, we encourage that. We want you to. Because the only way we can find workable, real solutions is by having honest, open dialogues. Thank you, everybody. We will see you next week, every Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Join us. Thank you.
Good night.